Hi, I'm Petra. That's what. That's what.
Hey, Petra. Hi.
What does it mean to be a spiritual person in the midst of the craziness of our, just our life these days? Whether it's raising children, going to work, having to deal with the pandemic, or our political situation.
Really practical ways to tap into spirituality. Science of Mind has done that for me, and I'm excited to be doing this work with Oscar and Petra to show you how you can get into your own spiritual ebb and flow and and say what? Live the life that you really want to live.
We're going to put hot topics, current events like meditation, law of attraction, and manifestation, all this stuff that you have questions about, that I have questions about. We're going to spin the wheel, and then wherever it lands is what we're going to talk about that day.
So we'll hope you'll join us on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. for Say What on YouTube Live.
Well, here we are, another Tuesday, another Say What? Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see all of you. Thank you for joining us, you guys. Okay, so another week, and unfortunately, another shooting. I saw a meme on Facebook, and it just broke my heart. And it's about the shooting, and it just said, so I guess everything is back to normal.
Yeah.
That just crushed me. I guess we are back to normal. Here we are again. I don't even know where to start with this.
I know the shooting of the black man in Minneapolis, and then we had the stopping of the Black Army lieutenant. And I mean, it just, it's like, it has to stop. It has to stop. So Shakira, how are you doing around all this?
Petra, every time these things happen, it's just like another plunge at my gut. It's tough because this is not something that's been going on just for a couple of weeks or a couple months. This has been going on for years. And now it's been put out here where we can see it, but then it's also, kind of traumatizing to have to relive it over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? I can only imagine. I mean, I can't even imagine, right? And so it would be silly for me to pretend that I can imagine. I continue to hope that it is the fact that it's on social media, that it is splashed in front of us, that it stays in our face. But I'm not the one who's traumatized by it. Yeah. Right. I'm part of who has to be woken up by it. And it's so easy to want to turn away and not to look because it's hard and it's painful and it's incomprehensible. It's like, are you kidding? How is this still happening? And it shows us how entrenched a particular point of view is and how, the other and how much we continue to support ways of looking at life and political systems and social, cultural ways of looking at life that outpicture with the shooting of black men, school shootings, the beating of Asian women. I mean, it's insanity, right? Yeah. It's absolute insanity.
Yeah.
And I noticed that I want to start, jumping up and down and saying, stop. It's been abusive to our African-American brothers and sisters since slavery began. When do you say no? Abuse has to stop. It has to stop. I grew up in an abusive household, which was tiny minuscule experience, comparatively. And it took my mother a long time to say no. And how many people are who are in abusive situations who are told they're crazy.
Right.
Well, it's not really that bad. Yeah. It's not really that bad. He didn't really mean it. She didn't really mean it. unfortunately it's normally a he, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
And it does feel crazy making. It feels crazy making to me. I look at the conversations about police and about guns, and I think, how can you keep a straight face and say these things, right? And yet there are so many people working for the other side. And that's the other, for me, that's the other disheartening thing. I mean, I literally can't imagine what it is to live in your shoes, Shakira. I try to the best of my ability. But I have not had that experience. And I see how disheartening it is for me to say, well, gosh, we've been working on this since the moment that I started becoming spiritually aware. That's a lot of years, not 400 obviously, but it's still a lot of years. And it's easy for me to say, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's always going to be this way. And I have to fight that tooth and nail, to fight that defeatist, fatalistic attitude. But man, it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking to be unsure as to what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I just keep waiting for the tipping point. I feel like, when is enough enough? Surely this is enough. Surely this, with every shooting, I'm like, surely this is it. Like, this is enough. This is when change, we have to, where's the tipping point? I keep thinking we're arriving at the tipping point. We don't tip. There's, the rhetoric gets in the way, and it's just like, what is happening? How are we still here?
For a lot of people in my community, from the types of people that I've talked to, we stopped waiting on that tipping point a long time ago.
Right.
And it's not to say that the change can't happen, but it's that if we keep waiting, we're gonna be waiting. Because it's a matter of responsibility to really deal with the thought systems and beliefs and ideas that have created this system. It's a system, and it's a systematic issue. And so if you're not really willing to go to the root of what it's for, and what the root of what is supported by it, then you can't dismantle it. It's the same way, Dr. Petra, when you talk to us about how we're dealing with our thought systems and all the different things that we have to change in order to create a real change. You actually have to go to the root. Yeah. And when people aren't willing to do that work, and organizations are not willing to do that work, and infrastructures are not willing to do that work.
Yeah. Shakira, what do you, like, just your opinion, what is your interpretation of the root, or one of the root causes? Like, how do we get to the root? How do you spotlight it? Like, what do you think is one of the roots?
I think it has a lot to do with fear.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure of all of where that comes from. You would really have to sit down in a lecture hall with some of my elders,
right,
that really go in on these topics. But I think a lot of it has to do with fear. I know that there is some idea that Black people, there's some idea that's been circulated about Black people over-rising in some way and coming and hurting people in some way. And it's like, yeah, we really wanted to do that. I mean, we've had time we've had time to act crazy if you really thought that was what was going to happen.
Right.
Where do you see Black people trying to hurt anybody?
Yeah.
There's a whole idea in how do you say, the prejudices that are out there, they're just continuously repeated and regurgitated and then passed down as this is what you have to look for. If he's a Black man, if he's wearing a hoodie, if he's this size, this weight, if he's got this kind of hairstyle, there's so much. And, it even got to a place, Louis used to have locks. I'd locked his hair at one time. I had to chop his hair off. I was like, you can't get a job like that. You can't get a job. I had locks. I chopped my hair off. There was a point in time where these things were a big deal. And they're still a big deal for certain people, but, navigating environments is difficult when you have to deal with what other people's belief systems are, and you don't even know what that is. Like when I'm at CSLDallas, I feel completely fine. Everybody is giving me an opportunity to just be myself.
Exactly.
But when
Yeah.
I'm not at CSLDallas, I don't know what people are thinking. And even if I go up to them with the energy of, love and kindness, that doesn't mean that their own predispositions are not there. And, sometimes that happens. And I just have to continue to be love in the space, but that doesn't always mean that the other person is aware of that way, aware of that way of being, right? And that part is hard. I think I brought that up to Reverend Karen once. I was like, I love being at CSLDallas, but when I go home, and when I'm walking around the street and somebody comes at me some weird kind of way, I have to remember that they're not a part of CSLDallas.
Right.
That part is like, oh, you don't go to CSLDallas. That part is.
Oh, and that's, yeah, I mean, and I think you say something really important, Shakira, right? And we have this notion that we say, well, now I'm going to go out into the real world. I'm in the bubble, and now I'm going to go out in the real world. And what I say to people is, no, you don't understand. This is the real world. That out there is insanity.
Mm-hmm.
This is the real world. This is actually how humanity is supposed to behave. And so I would like for us to keep encouraging ourselves not to hold it as the exception, but to hold it as the vision. Mm-hmm. And if we can do it in a small group of people and have that experience, then we can do it in a larger group of people. And I think that's the task of the light worker, is we have to shine light on where the darkness is. And then we have to say, and this is how it can be, but we can't say it out of pure idealism. We have to be able to point to it and say, look, those people are doing it, and it's happening over there, and it's happening over there, and there's some movement there, and those people are trying. They're at least trying. They're at least talking about it. Let's give them credit for at least talking about it, right? And begin showing ourselves that. And so, yeah, Shakira, I loved what you just said, and about, sitting in the conversation with your elders, and yet fundamentally, that's actually not what spirituality teaches. It's not what metaphysics teaches. Psychology teaches you have to go to the root of it, and you have to deal with the root of it. Science of mind and metaphysics says all you have to know is that there is a root, and that root is a false belief. That's what you have to know. What we have to do is change that false belief into the truth, the spiritual truth. And we have to so focus and commit to and expect that spiritual truth to outpicture that it must then, based on the universal laws, it must then manifest in outward form. Because if we spend so much time on the root cause, we can actually hold it in place. We can continue to give it so much negativity, negative energy, so much anger, so much, how come this happened? Why did this happen? This, we can give it so much energy that we literally lock it into place, and we continue to hold it.
Wow.
And that's the danger, right? And it's sad. Let me see. So when you said we're no longer waiting, right? We're not waiting for that time to come anymore. We're not waiting for the tipping point. What I heard was, well, we're not expecting it to come.
Well, that's not what I said, though.
Right, but because you went then on to say, because we have to do things, we have to, right? We have to engage, we have to participate, we have to see what's going on and participate. But I think sometimes we don't hear all the way through to what you said afterwards, right? And what we hear, and certainly what I feel in the moment of reading that kind of news again, is that momentary sense of resignation, right? I'm waiting for the tipping point. Why isn't it here? Oh, shit. I can't freaking believe it. And then to lift out of that in some form or fashion and say, I actually am committed to expecting it to be different. I'm committed to expecting it to be different. I'm committed to expecting it to be different. And I'm willing to be moved, right? I'm also willing to be part of the answer, and other people have to be part of the answer, and all of that. And I think that is yeah, I have enormous respect for you, Shakira, for so many people who I know are doing this amazing work about just being themselves in the world. As I said, I don't have to carry that around, right? And yet, you know, you still have to function in the world. And I don't know what else to say, but I want you to know that I'm not waiting. I'm expecting. By God, I'm expecting. And oh God, you know, how long does it have to take? I do not know the answer to that.
Well, I think you just said it too, is when you're expecting and you're moving in it, the answer is now, right? The answer is always now. It's not another day. It's
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
And,
that.
and I really noticed yesterday when I was reading all of that and I was feeling all my feelings and thinking about, you know, all of it. And I actually wrote on Facebook, stop, stop, stop. This has to stop. And I really thought about, you know, we teach so deeply, we have to be for things and not against things. And I think there's a powerful place for a universal no. And I think I get to say stop and not be worried that I'm against something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's also a spiritual game that people play with themselves and therefore don't have to commit or act or talk or whatever it is. Because, well, I don't want to be against anything. I'm just gonna know the spiritual truth, right? And in the Science of Mind, we teach about that universal no. This is no. This is not the way people of good conscience and character and spiritual depth behave. No. This
Right.
has to stop.
Yeah.
You know what, Petra? And even, you know, you've said that when you make a choice to a thing, you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And so I think even just making that choice, right? And continuing to live in that, that's saying no too without being against.
Right. Yeah, that's important. That's true. That's really true. And I think we have to find our way through that, you know, and it's one thing for you to have to live it. It's one thing for you, Oscar, to have to live it in the way that you live it. I live it by being a woman. I live it by being a woman who's married to a woman.
Right.
But I pass more easily. Unless somebody sees something about me. I look very proper. I generally look very proper. I don't really intend to look so proper, but
Yeah.
sort of, you know, whatever, right? And that's yeah, and that has to stop. You know, the other thing is, of course, we have a granddaughter now, right? We have a granddaughter, and I'm revisiting all my lovely Disney stuff, and I love how Disney is also evolving. Right. I love that they have princesses of color. I love that the most recent movie that I watched, they did a remake of Mulan. I don't know if you guys have seen the remake of Mulan. And of course, there was a big issue, political issue, blah, 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 blah.
Of course.
I didn't want to watch it for a while. And then I thought, no, I really want to see it. And so at the end, they actually changed the ending. And I don't want to be a spoiler. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen it?
Have you
seen it?
Yeah.
Okay. So just turn it down for a minute.
This everyone, spoiler alert. Turn the volume down for 30 seconds.
Right. Because in the old one, in the initial one, right, the guy comes after her and they get married and they live happily after ever. And in the new one, right, she actually becomes the warrior that she is. She actually becomes captain of the guard. She actually becomes a leader and she becomes a legend. It's like a totally different trajectory, right?
Exactly.
So I love that Disney is growing, you know what I mean? And they're trying to really start to show something new. Because of course I grew up on the knight in shining armor who was going to come rescue me.
Right.
But so kind of redoing all of this. The other thing that I'm noticing, and I noticed it when my son was little too, up until a certain age, we teach our children, be who you are. Be who you are. You're different than everybody else and you have to shine and you're right. I mean, I don't think there's a Disney movie, I don't care how old it is, that doesn't have that message for a child. Be who you are. all the kids' books that I read to my son, that I'm reading now to my granddaughter. And when does that change? When does that change? Why does that change? Why would that change? Where is it? Somewhere in elementary school, where all of a sudden this need to be different, to conform, to fit, or to be the other, or to like all of a sudden there's this whole other message. And by the time you're an adult, teenager and an adult, the message is entirely different. No, you not be who you are. The message is, oh, you're that. Oh, you're that. Oh, you're that. Like as if you can now been put into a box, and now I know something about you, and I can decide whether I like you or not, only because I know what box you fit in. And that is mind-boggling to me. That when we spend so much time with our youngest children, teaching them, be who you are, be fully who you are. And I think that is, I think that's unconscionable that we do that to each other, and we do that to our children, and probably, and I don't know for how long. I don't know when that message crept into the kids. It certainly wasn't in what I was raised with. Certainly not the European fairy tales and things like that. Oh no, that message was not in those fairy tales by any means.
Yeah.
So there's something about, I don't know whether it's the century or United States or whatever, right, where that became a ubiquitous message. And it's like, I don't know, it's like giving somebody something really beautiful and powerful and a recognition, and then taking it away. It feels so hateful and so hurtful and so unnecessary.
Or in my experience, punishing them for it. Punishing them for receiving that gift. Because, I mean, when I came to America, I came from Switzerland. I remember going to school in Switzerland, having a birthday party, and literally the entire class, I invited the whole class, everybody came to the house and made a birthday party. Like, I never felt different in Switzerland, even though I'm Chinese and I spoke French, but also Cantonese in the house. Then when I came to America, immediately I was bullied for the first time. Wow. And suddenly then my entire childhood, all of my junior high and high school, I was desperately trying to fit the mold.
Right.
I had to to survive, I had to fit the mold. And I was bullied every single day without fail. There would be physical, verbal, all sorts of abuse. Sometimes even from teachers would join in, because I was so different. Nobody looked like me, and I was a weirdo and flamboyant and fun and too much. I was always too much. So it went from like, you're exactly right. Seeing all the movies and everything in media and books saying, be who you are, you're wonderful, you're perfect. And then suddenly being who I was unacceptable.
Right.
And it was shit on by everybody around me, including the adults around me. So you're so right. It's such a weird thing. Like, so I guess, so, I yes, be who you are, but then in I guess in America, it's like, well, be who you are if you fit the mold.
And if your skin is the wrong color, your eyes are the wrong shape, you don't have a prayer of fitting the mold. What are you going to do?
Exactly right. Then it's like how do I?
What is that? How, like, I want to say what?
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
What?
Say what?
What?
Yeah.
How is this possible on the 21st century? Right. And I think you're right, Shakira. I think it's fear. I think it's fear that goes all the way back to, so people were ripped out of Africa, warriors and fabulous, grandmother women, leaders and kings and queens. They were ripped out of Africa. Is it any surprise they fought when they got here? Is it any surprise that they were mad and and so then this whole mythology about the savage black man and the uppity black woman became the stereotype. Well, of course they were pissed off. They were, how could you not be?
Right.
Right. And so then that has to be, that mythology has to grow and grow and grow to subject and to subvert people into then being dehumanized. And I mean, it's just and so then that has become this kind of underlying unconscious mythology that continues to live somewhere in our culture. I do want to continue to say that I do know that there are lots and lots and lots and lots of people who are seeking to do work to unearth that and dismantle that. And that's the hope. I did see that there was a White Lives Matter rally. I don't know if you saw that in the newspaper on my same feed, where it talked about Dwayne Wright, where it talked about Dwayne. One of the other news stories right below was the White Lives Matter rally that nobody came to. And I said, see, and that's telling also. There's a mythology. There's equally a mythology that white supremacy and white lives and whiteness is so embedded that it's untractable. Because I don't believe that. We're seeing it. And I think, it's ridiculously slow and painful. No question about it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's unconscionably slow and painful. And I don't know what else to do but to look for the moments and the places where it does seem to change, or it does seem to have movement, because I want to lend my consciousness to tip the freaking scale.
Yeah.
I don't want to give in, and I don't want to give up, and I don't want to be so disappointed and so distraught and so angry and quite frankly so afraid. Sometimes I do think people are doing some of these things because they do in fact want to spark a civil war. And that's equally as unconscionable.
Yeah.
And it's divide and conquer, divide. And we have to stand undivided.
Right.
We have to stand undivided to the best of our ability, right? Because that's also the outpicturing of the spiritual truth. But God, I mean, could we just make sure we're not just saying platitudes?
Yeah. Please.
Right? Let's not just do spiritual platitudes. Let's do the real, honest, hard, deep work to mean those platitudes. And when we don't mean them, we have to feel the feeling.
Right.
Yeah, I think essentially it just comes down to, if my survival is predicated on the pain of others, then I need to assess what is actually surviving. And so that when you said survival, that you were fitting in for survival, Oscar, I got that. I felt that. But then I'm also thinking, well, from the perspective of those people that felt it was okay to treat you that way, what part of them was dying in your presence because of who you were? And it's like, so what, when we decide what we are going to fight for and what we're going to be, saying yes to, and I think it makes a big difference. I think it makes a big difference when we determine what is giving life to our foundation. And it can't be pain to other people.
Right.
Can't be pain to other people, can't be hate, can't be fear.
Yeah.
There's a law of cause and effect, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What goes around comes around.
Right. Yeah. And what you fear most is going to come upon you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that's one of the hardest parables in the Gospels, the teachings of Jesus. One of the hardest parables is, him who hath, to him shall be given. Him who hath not, even that which he hath will be taken away. Right? It is an exacting statement of the law of cause and effect. If I believe that I don't have, if I believe that I don't count, if I believe that I don't matter, if I believe that I don't, that I can't have, then even that which I have does get taken away from me. Mm-hmm. And so we have to join with all of the marginalized people and stand with each other and say, no, we have a right, we have a place, we have a life, we have a voice, we have a belonging, we have a gift to give. We do, we actually have, yes, we have. And in that, then that which we have must be given to us, and it must be multiplied, right? And that's that other side of the delicate boundary of acknowledging the past, acknowledging the root, But if we continue to focus on we have not, look at what's been taken away from us, we have not, we have not, we have not, then even that which we have is taken away. It gets right. And there's such a delicate balance. And I have no right to speak to a Black person about how they have to walk through that spiritual paradox. I don't have to live in that skin, and I don't have to live that journey. I just know that I've had to make that journey in other ways.
Yeah.
And as individuals and as cultures and as people, we each have to make that journey. And it's a hard journey. And it's a hard, that's one of the hardest parables in the Gospels of them all. And we want so much to say, well, he that doesn't have, we should give it to them. And yet there's something that is being expressed there. And I don't always know how to get to that. You know what I mean? And I'm a white person. I don't have any business telling a Black person, well, you have to have what I don't know what that means for, you know what I mean? And yet I know spiritually, I know there's deep truth to that. Right. I know that, but it's not for me to, you know, I don't know what that means to somebody who has grown up with 400 years of slavery. I don't, you know what I mean? So it's a something, these are the things that I think about a lot.
Right.
Yeah. I'm so grateful right now for all of my elders that have taught me so much, because I think as we learn the truth about who we are, apart from slavery, apart from any of these experiences that people think that our history starts here, our history sure does not start
It
here.
does not.
And then for those of us that are Indigenous, our history is even further back. Mm-hmm. And so I'm grateful that my elders have taught me that, because in that changing and reevaluation of things in my life in and of itself, I didn't have to start from a place of subjugation.
Yes.
And so I do not move from a place of subjugation. And then when I do have that thing that comes up, that rub, I'm willing to have the conversation about it. And then to call in the help for, you know what, this has to be out of alignment. You heard that Black woman almost come in, right? This gotta.
We love it. We love it. Go for it.
I love it so much. More.
This gotta give. Something gotta give. You know. Anyway. So yeah, I mean, there are moments where when I feel in a position of lack, or I feel in a position of I'm not able to have because, or I can't have what others have, or it should be expressed at a lower degree for me than someone else. I have to then lean into something that says something different.
Yes.
So you happen to be one of those elders, Dr. Petra, and then I have my Black elders. I have Native American elders. I have elders in different areas that will pour the right message at the right time for me to re-educate my mind and to reestablish the direction that I move in and how I move. And so I think that's so necessary for our communities. So yes, I agree that you can't necessarily tell us how to do it, right? But when we know who we are and we really get into who we are, and then we get into the spiritual aspect of who we are, which you do speak about, which you do and can speak about, I think that is, it influences how we can then choose to live a life that is different and a life that creates more of the life that we want. So I would not discredit at all what you can do, right? And I think that in your doing, it is very powerful. So, yeah.
Thanks. I'm definitely one of those people who try. It's all I can claim to.
Yes, you are.
All I can claim to. I do try.
And I love it. So we also have another interesting topic. Last week's episode, we got a strike on YouTube.
Yes.
I was like, what?
Yeah,
I was like, what's happening? So what? Yeah. What?
So, so it's really interesting. The challenge, of course, is that they don't give you any information and there's no real person to talk to. It's really challenging, right? So we got a strike about medical misinformation.
Which, that was weird, because it was what part was misinformation?
Well, so it was, so what? We talked about the COVID, we talked about the vaccine, and we talked about, there were questions about, well, how can people not take it because of faith, and I don't know what all, right? And so we appealed. And there was, you got 800 characters in which to appeal. You got a box of 800 characters. And so I wrote, I can only imagine something was taken out of context, that that there was a question about, there are certain faiths that don't support the vaccine. How is that possible? And I wrote, we do not agree with this point of view. We talked about how we don't agree with this point of view. And so the entire portion was about supporting the vaccine.
Yeah.
So, and I used 770 characters for my appeal, right? Because it said, do you have 770 at 800? And so, and I didn't know, I mean, I didn't, all I could think about was what we had talked about. Like, and I was like, I can't even fathom where there was medical misinformation.
Yeah.
And so, then we got a response to the appeal, and the response was, we've read your appeal. The appeal is denied. No further appeal is available. And here are our community guidelines. Well, up until that point, I hadn't actually seen our community guidelines. I didn't know anything about the community guidelines. Actually, I didn't even know where to look for them.
Right.
So I looked at medical, and it's all about COVID, and it's all about you. So the very first one was you cannot promote prayer, ritual, or something else, which you can't remember, in lieu of the vaccine. Well, we didn't do that.
We didn't do that.
We talked about a pill and a prayer. And then there were other things about, all the rumors, all the crazy. And we talked a little bit about some of those rumors. Some of those were, we talked about the conspiracy theories. And it seemed to me that in each, that we kept saying, and that just seems crazy. And so I looked through all of that, and I thought, well, and it said in there, unless you very clearly say the opposite, or, you know what I mean? You can talk about these things if you very clearly say the opposite, which I quite frankly thought we had done, but we obviously hadn't done it well enough or full enough, or I don't know, but there's no snippet. They don't give you the snippet, this piece, this is what, and I don't know if somebody actually looked at it the second time, looked at the whole piece or what. So we did get a strike and a warning, so that we just, if it happens again, then we're a week off YouTube. Can't live stream for a week, and I think 3 strikes you're out. This was a warning, so it wasn't a strike; it was a warning.
Okay.
So we want to be clear about that. But the thing that was the most challenging is that I could only guess at what I thought they might have been responding to, but I don't actually know, because you don't get a transcript or this sentence or and I'm assuming somebody went back and actually listened to the context of it. I completely support what they're doing. I read all those community guidelines, and what they're trying to do is, could we stop with the conspiracy theories, right? And could we stop with the hate mongering, and could we stop with all that stuff? So, and I'm perfectly happy for us to live within the guidelines. It's now hard to know, where did we step over the line? What wasn't clear enough? Right. That was then in the final analysis. What was challenging is not really completely understanding, where the misstep was, because it's clear that we talked about supporting the vaccine, and we asked questions, and we talked about, what are some of the, crazy ideas around it.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know what to say, but we will do our best to stay within the community guidelines, right? I mean, because they're actually completely reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, I read, now that I've seen them, I read them through, and I'm like, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Which is the other reason why I was like, what?
Yeah, because we're in full agreement with them. And we thought we were living within them. So that's so strange. Okay, well, speaking of strange, we're about to get real weird, y'all.
Uh-oh, here comes
Here comes the
Spin
wheel.
Spin the wheel.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, it landed on love.
Love. Well, here's the thing. I wrote that in with all caps because it wasn't about like romantic love. I wanted to talk about like the impulse of life love, like agape love, God love. That's what I wanted to talk about. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Because I mean, we can always go back to the romantic love in another episode. But I really want to talk about. I feel like now more than ever we should talk about that love.
Well, it's important to talk about, right? Because there's no faith tradition that doesn't say God is love,
Right.
right? And so we have to actually ask ourselves, so what does that mean? And in some traditions, in the Western traditions, that tends to mean God loves me. That means I am known by God, seen by God, and therefore loved by God. I am somehow a creation of God, a child of God. And therefore God is the parent, the creator, which implies God out there, me here. And then it's all about the relationship. Am I being lovable?
Yeah. Am I pleasing God? Yeah.
Right? Right. Am I being lovable?
Right.
Now, in the Eastern traditions, there is no such thing. In the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, in the Eastern traditions, this does not exist because there's no being God. There are aspects of the divine reality that are cloaked in form that look like gods and goddesses, but it's really trying to get a hold of various aspects of the one infinite reality. And there isn't that same sense of love as a parent or a being loves us. And so in metaphysics, spirituality, and in metaphysics, we have to ask ourselves then, what if God isn't a person, a super person out there? What does it mean for God to love? And I think we can move to the idea of not God to love, but God is love. What does that mean? Well, if you think of the infinite reality as the place where life comes from, as creation comes from, something has to move in the intangible, metaphysical, mystical, spiritual realm. Something has to move to begin the creative process. Something has to bring creation into being, right? From the subatomic level, you can think about it as something has to cause the electron to want to wink into existence, right? Otherwise, you just have a field of potentiality. So there has to be something, a movement, something, right? And that impulse of creation, if we examine it, we recognize that the impulse is always for creation, right? It's always for life. And what does the quantum field make subatomic particles out of, but out of itself? What's the universe made out of, but out of the divine, the transcendent divine infinite reality, which is no thing, but is the fountain of all things. So imagine that there's an impulse for creation to express, to experience. The Hindus say for the delight of God, the delight of the divine. There's this movement of expression. The movement of expression is always for more life, and everything that's needed for that life is already given. It has the impulse and the possibility for creation has become its own creation, has given all of itself into creation so that creation can express and experience. So everything is given, everything that is needed is given, everything that has been created out of, from, made from, and imbued by the one infinite reality. From a metaphysical point of view, that is love. That's the cosmic love. Love, there's the movement of the impulse of life to create is so powerfully profound that it has given all of itself for each one of us to be here. And it has become us. We are so loved. The universe, the infinite reality, the infinite universal intelligence and wisdom and presence has shown up here. That's how loved we are. So rather than being loved from above or like a parent, right? It's literally manifested as us. I mean, when you think about that, Like, that's the profoundest love there is. I've completely given everything, all of me. Like, so think about the things that we really love to do, that we really love to be engaged in. And we lose track of time and we give ourselves to it and we become utterly engrossed, and we've just given all of ourselves into it. And I mean, it's such a life-giving experience. And those are the things we love. So from the metaphysical, from the science of mind point of view, that is a short answer or a short explanation of love. Science of mind says love is spirit's self-givingness of itself into creation. That's the shorthand. Spirit's self-givingness of itself into creation, because it's become everything and it is everything, and it's the life that is everything, and everything has been given, and everything that's needed is already here, and everything is available, and everything is present, and there's nothing that has to be asked for, or creation doesn't have to become something so that it can be loved. I think that's right. You don't have to become anything to be loved. You are you, right? And so, like, just that child conversation we just had about our children.
Exactly.
So that's what I think. What do you guys think?
I just think this ties so well into what we talked about before. If we know this to be the spiritual truth, if more people know this to be, if all people know this to be the truth, the capital T truth, there wouldn't be we wouldn't have any of this nonsense that's been happening for generations. Mm-hmm. All of this would have just been. So it's great to hear that, and it's great to know the truth, and now it's just about, like, how do we put that out and get more people aware of this truth. Because that was so dead on, Petra, and it just ties into everything we've talked about so much. I just can't help but, like, think about, like, how do we talk about this to more people? How do we reach more people with this? How do we get people to wake up and be aware, spiritually aware? What about you, Shakira?
I mean, just listening to you, Petra, I'm over here like, oh, like,
I know, I'm like, yes.
I'm like, oh, she's sweet like honey, and it's just
how it feels to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even in the Ifa tradition, we look at love in all of the orishas, but we also look at love as an entity, which is Oshun, and so that is the honey feeling, and she's so giving of herself, and she's prosperity and abundance and vitality and the moving of the waters and the freshwater rivers, and I mean, it is, yeah. I'm just feeling all of that, and I'm just if we identified ourselves more in that context, we could be from that context. And that's why I say I get so much thanks for the re-education, because when we re-educate our minds that we are not from a place of sin, we are not created from a place of negativity,
right?
We started in pure ecstasy, pure love,
right.
I mean, somebody had to be doing something. I'm just saying. Right?
That's
and
right.
Spirit just breaks the whole mold and is like, behold, I have created thine.
Right. Right. And if it's an infinite reality, right, it doesn't matter how many beings there are, how much life there is being expressed, there's always enough, right? So how can we be afraid? Wait a minute, I don't know, can you be loved that much? But is there going to be enough left over for me? I mean, it's crazy. It's nonsense. How can that kind of love be exclusive? How can that kind of love be only for some people and not for others, or only in some places and not in others? I mean, if it's truly an infinite reality, then it's really infinite. It can't be used up. It can't go away. It can't ever be less than its fullness, right where I am and right where each one of us is. And it doesn't matter how many each one of us there are on the planet, in the galaxy, in the universe. It's utterly unquenchable. It's unmistakably so vastly infinite that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the other piece I don't understand. Right. And, and then for all of us who were raised in a very, very more strict, perhaps religious, Western religious tradition, right? There's the whole thing about hubris and, don't get too big for your britches and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And so, but what did it say in the second creation story, right? And the serpent, who was, of course, the symbol of the goddess, that's what they did. They just co-opted, made it evil. It was actually the most sacred animal on the planet at that time in all the matriarchal fertility traditions. But what did the serpent say? If you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will be like gods, because you will know the truth of who you are. You will know the truth of your being, spiritual, human, right? Pairs of opposites, the knowledge of good and evil, and the truth of all of that. You will be like gods. And so, but for me, my experience of when I really, 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 really get to experience that and really like have that feeling, it's so great, it's so great, it's so great, right? I have tapped into something that is so vastly beyond me that the idea of hubris is like not even possible. It's just not even, it's in the other room over there somewhere. and how we should be so afraid because it instantly elevates everybody.
Yeah.
It's not oh, I'm that, but you're not. No, if it's infinite and it's doing that wherever life is, then that instantly is true for everybody. So hubris doesn't even become an issue. Now it does if I continue to be very egoic with it, of course, and we have to do our spiritual work and our psychological work. We have to grow emotionally intelligent and all that stuff. But from the, its purest essential truth, it can only bring us together. It can't actually separate us or set us in some kind of spiritual hierarchy around each other.
Right.
And I think that's the false thinking of all of that. And my experience and my observation is for people, the more that becomes the reality for us, just as you said, Oscar, the more we want more people to experience that yummy, yummy, yummy feeling. It's like, when the Buddhists talk about drinking of the nectar, that's what they mean. That drinking of the nectar of the reality of love is like, oh my God, it's intoxicating.
Yeah.
And so that becomes the bodhisattva, right? That's the bodhisattva thing. I won't pass through the gates until everybody can pass through the gates. And so it's natural that you then come to exactly what you said. It's that then becomes everybody should be having this, should know this. It would raise all of us into an entirely different way of seeing and being ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
And it changes everything, changes how we engage and all of that. And so, I want it for everyone. And it doesn't have to be in the form of science of mind, and it doesn't have to be in the form of metaphysics even. I think it's any spiritual path that brings you to the nectar of oneness, any spiritual path that brings you to that place. It's not the path that matters, right? It's not about an exclusive path. There's only one way to get it. You can only do it if you practice science of mind, or if you practice metaphysics, or you practice Christianity, or whatever, Buddhism, whatever. No, any path, your African path, right? They all have this embedded in them.
You're literally the only faith leader I've ever met in my entire life who has said that. Other ones I've met, it's either my way or the highway, and you are saying we're not the only path.
That's crazy. Mm-mm.
You are the first person of faith I've met that has said that. In all my 34 years, you're the first one. I've never met another person who has said that. So, kudos to you, Petra.
Thank you. And it's fundamental to what we teach. It's fundamental to what we believe, right? There's a golden thread that runs through all traditions. And this is it. This is the golden thread. I mean, the mystics from the 14th century, Julian of Norwich and Hildegard of Bingen and Meister Eckhart, just read their stuff. They're utterly intoxicated with the love of the divine. And they use the language of bride and groom, and they use the language of being slain by the presence. And it's not that different than the language of the Hindus and the Buddhists, and and it's the mystical language of the Sufis and Rumi, and it's everybody's pointing the same directions.
Yeah.
And I am not by any means the only faith leader who says this. I think there's lots of people in the New Thought movement who say this and believe this. Lots of faith leaders. I think there's a lot of faith leaders in the progressive movements of Christianity, Judaism, Islam that are also saying this. The problem is they don't get any press.
Right.
They don't get any press. They don't get any because there's no, where's the story in that? Yeah. Oh, everything's lovely, kumbaya. Excuse me, we just had a black man shot on the street. It's not, everything's not lovely, and it's not kumbaya.
Exactly.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and that's the that's the constant tension of being a spiritual being, having a human experience.
Totally. Wow. Oh, so good. So you guys, thank you for joining us. That's the hour. Check out CSLDallas.org for our calendar. You can see all of our events. Tomorrow's Meditation Metaphysics. It's going to be epic with Dr. Petra.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on Facebook Live. And then on Sundays, we have our Sunday celebration. If you haven't catch one of those on YouTube or on Facebook, and it's even a little limited in person, hopefully more soon, but if you haven't caught one of our Sunday celebrations, you are missing out, because it is a whole other level. We just go bonkers in that space. You have to check us out on Sunday mornings. We love you guys. Thank you for joining us, and we will